The sky had turned dark, the snow had fallen more densely, and suddenly there were loud roars below. On the top of the mountain the great elder huffed for an hour, and then looked down to see what was happening. Below, one armored generals rushing in like lightning to kill the people of the Jin family. Then the gray-haired man also held a sword and rushed towards to the Jin family, who died like a straw. Then there was another man, with long hair. He also madly killed everyone who passed through his hands and fell.
In the distance is Liion Beck. He is telling all his warriors show no mercy to the Jin family of Taiyuan.
Jin Weikyung saw that the main forces of Mount Sword Sector joined the war and killing Jin family's forces. Then he coldly spoke, the time has come.
The great elder already observed the situation, and said indeed it has. He's still looking at Liion Beck below, and thinking to himself it would have been better if that man showed up a bit later, but I guess it doesn't matter. In the end, they will most likely step in. Then he stepped forward and said to Jin Weikyung, I'll take care of Liion Beck.
To hearing that, Jin Weikyung replied, do as you wish. Then Jin Weikyung, thinking about Liion Beck the Bloodhound, he's a transcendent martial master who single-handedly led the Mount Sword Sector to the top. How unfortunately. I've always wanted to have a talk with him. Then he said to Weipeng, we'll take care of the rest.
Weipeng respectfully took the sword and walked over and said, as you wish, my lord.
Jin Weikyung reached for the sword. He stared at the sword, looking very thoughtful. He remembered that man, the owner of the sword. In the letter he left behind he wrote, I want to travel the mainland. Use this sword in my stead. Jin Weikyung was silent, his face was hidden in the darkness, and then he thought to himself, I don't even know where the person who is supposed to be our family head currently is. Give me a break. Traveling the mainland? You've done nothing but fool around your entire life. And my second brother should have received news regarding our situation right about now. He motivated himself and thinking, I must be the one to protect the Jin family of Taiyuan. He pulled out his sword, swung it into the air, and thought, I have to emerge victorious. Jin Weikyung turned around, stood stunned before his warriors, then raised his sword and said loudly, don't leave a single one of them alive.
On the other side, Liion Beck personally killing people of the Jin family. The people who passed through his hands were no longer intact. But Liion Beck, still did not showing any mercy. Suddenly his eyes noticed something and he looked in one direction. His eyes were very cruel when looking in that direction. That person was Jin Weikyung. He was calmly walking forward and saying the name Jin Weikyung. The sword in his hand emitted a layer of red murderous aura. He gritted his teeth and thought, you're finally here. I'll make sure to kill you with my own hands. Liion Beck was very angry after seeing Jin Weikyung.
Suddenly a voice on behind speak out, oh ho. Sword QI?
He suddenly jumped after hearing that voice. He was a bit stunned, slowly turned his head and thought to himself, since when did he? Then without saying a word he swung his sword on his behind. The sword, a pile of dust appeared. The sword was also emitting a huge murderous aura, but the sword could not pierce the great elder's body because he had moved to a quite far place. Liion Beck coldly looked at the great elder and asked the blade of illusion.
The great elder looked at him and replied, it's been a while since I've last heard the name. I assume you're the Bloodhound?
Looking at the great elder leisurely stroking his beard, Liion Beck replied, it's a good thing that you're here. In his heart he was thinking, even though I was focused on Jin Weikyung, I never expected this man to appear behind me without any presence. He's definitely a martial master. Liion Beck spoke up again, it's not a bad idea becoming the strongest in all of Shaanxi first.
The great elder replied, that's a bit impossible for you.
Hearing that, Liion Beck coldly said, you never know until you try.
The great elder said, that's what the weak always say. They fail to realize that nothing will change the inevitable outcome.
Liion Beck swung his murderous aura sword once, and then he raised his eyebrows and said, your words are sharp.
The great elder also using his sword aura, and swung his sword, then said, I wonder if my words are the only thing that's sharp. He frowned and said, I'll give you the first move.
Hearing that sarcastic sentence, Liion Beck's whole face turned red and was extremely angry. He did not hesitate any longer and rushed into battle with the great elder and attacked with full force using his sword. The great elder easily blocked it. He raised his eyebrows with anger due to his attack didn't affect. In multiple directions his sword slashed towards the great elder, and the great elder used his sword to block the attack. The great elder suddenly disappeared. In other second he noticed the elder on his behind. The great elder swung the sword at him. The sudden attack pushed him backwards and Liion Beck hardly blocked it. Liion Beck hand holding the sword trembled due to that critical hit. The great elder continuously slashed at Liion Beck in multiple directions, and Liion Beck had to retreat backwards because of the great elder's attacks. The group of people got attention seeing fighting, making them startled, and the sharp blades cutting everything that on his way. Even the sharp blades aura cut the on of the Mount Sword Sector member. And even Jin family also facing that sharp blades aura towards them. Liion Beck and the great elder fighting in the middle of the area make everyone scared.
Everyone was running around saying, get out of here. We're going to get caught up in their fight. Looking at the two warriors fighting with no one giving way, everyone said, so this is the battle between martial masters.
The sharp sword aura flew forward. Somehow it hit Liion Beck's arm. He shook his bleeding arm, changed the sword to his left hand. He thought, damn, to think that my main hand would be the one to get injured. At this moment the great elder swung his sword and flew, and Liion Beck raised his sword with his left hand to barely block the attack. A broken bone sound rang out in his mouth. He screamed. Liion Beck's left arm holding the sword was twisted back. He cried out in pain. The great elder noticed it, and taking benefits of it, and attacked with full force with his sword technique in multiple directions. Then his shoulders suddenly tensed, his waist shot out jets of blood, even his shoulder was spurting blood. A sword slashed straight towards Liion Beck's chest. He gritted his teeth, and endured the pain because he was seriously injured. He immediately spat out a bunch of real blood. His face turned pale, his white eyes filled with pain, because he was seriously injured.
Nearby a group of people fighting had to stop and look. They were all extremely stunned and couldn't believe their eyes. They even stopped fighting and didn't continue. After a moment of silence, a voice of discussion continues. The leader of the Mount Hang Sword sector has fallen.
The Mount Hang Sword sector people's calling their sector leader after seeing him with that condition.
The people from the Jin family shouted with joy, the head elder won.
Liion Beck, his whole body trembling, knelt down on the ground, spitting out fresh blood from his mouth. Seeing that the situation was not very good, Liion Beck asked with a trembling voice, what is it that you want?
But the great elder did not react at all. He was waiting for something else.
Seeing that there was no answer, Liion Beck put his hand on his painful chest, his voice unable to hide his fear, and said, I can give you my life. But in exchange, please let my men surrender peacefully, and I'll make sure that they seal off our gates for over 100 years. So please let the Mount Hang Sword sector.
Before he could finish speaking, the voice of the great elder interrupted, and said, I refused. And then coldly glanced at Liion Beck, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, what I want is for the total annihilation of your sector. I don't want to see any one of you to survive.
Hearing that, Liion Beck Guang screamed in pain and asked just why.
The great elder still coldly replied, stop playing dumb. If you guys were the ones who won this battle, you would do the same to us.
His mouth was full of blood and his eyes were filled with anger, and he screamed and said the Jin family of Taiyuan were the ones who started this. My poor son. You killed him.
The great elder raised his head to remember, then stroked his beard and said, ah, Liion-gun. Right, that child was the catalyst to this battle. Suddenly the great elder's voice became cold and even low, and he said to Liion Beck, when you are greeted by the god of death, please ask him this for me. Who was it that really killed Liion-gun?
Liion Beck's eyes turned red when he heard those words make him shocked. He screamed in pain and said, what the hell do you mean by that?
At this moment, the great elder swung his sword. He thought to himself, with that, this battle shall now come to an end. And when everyone is drunk over their victory, his face became distorted and extremely scary. He was extremely happy, thinking a new battle shall be born.
Liion Beck closed his eyes tightly, waiting for the sword to stab down on him, but suddenly the broken spear fell to the ground and the part of the spear flew into the corner of the wall.
The great elder is the one who cut the spear with pieces, and loudly said, show yourself. Then he looked the direction where the spear came from, the person standing on the top of the cliff. Then after looking at more closely, its Jin Taekyung appeared on his sight. He was still in the position of throwing the spear on that way.
Jin Taekyung looked at the great elder, then took a breath and shouted, it's me, you damn old man.
The great elder looked at him in shock and thought, Jin Taekyung, how the hell is he still alive?
Jin Taekyung took another deep breath. After taking a breath, he shouted, the head elder has betrayed the family. The crowd stopped the battle and started to turn to look at him. The great elder frowned, not expecting him to know this. The snow was whistling in the sky, and the quiet space made the wind whistle even more fiercely, moving.
To below, someone was observing him and said, isn't that the third young master?
Someone looking at the head elder and saying, betray. The head elder did.
The three people who were fighting and injured looked at Jin Taekyung with strange eyes. One of them, Jin family members, asked what kind of bullshit is he spouting.
The other one said, isn't he just drunk? Looks like his old habits came back.
The third one, Mount Hang Sword sector person, asked, is he one of your allies?
Standing on one side observing the battle, the fat man also heard the words and spoke, that crazy bastard.
The bearded man angrily said, how dare you disrespect the great head elder.
Wei Pang had just finished killing a member of the Liion Beck family member. He turned around in surprise and said, it seems he's gone mad.
In another corner, drops of blood on the sword fell drop by drop on the ground. Jin Waikyung doubted in his heart and asked, the head elder betrayed us. Jin Waikyung killed the general and Liion Beck advisor. Then he turned back to observe Jin Taekyung's side, even though he's not the type of person who would come all the way over here just to mess around when he should be guarding our rear. He silently thought, now that I think about it, everything leading up to this battle was quite strange. Jin Waikyung thought back to the events that had happened recently. First, a completely healthy Liion-gun was assassinated by some form of poison. Rumors regarding his death spread usually fast. Nobody really paid attention to the anonymous killer. Jin Waikyung felt like he was standing still as he pieced together these stories. He remembered the great elder's face and silently thought the head elder, who is known to be seclusive, made a rare appearance, and it was because of his peaceful cooperation that we were able to make it this far without running into any trouble. But what if getting this far Was exactly what the head elder wanted. Then he coldly called Wei Pang.
He wiped a few drops of blood on his shirt and replied, "Yes, my lord."
Jin Weikyung calmly said, "Kill the first elder."
Wei Pang was silent after hearing that.
The Jin family members behind him asked in shock, "What? Family head, have you gone insane?"
Jin Weikyung looked at his loyal subordinate with a serious face and said, with a very determined voice, "Use everything you got."
Hearing that, Wei Pang turned around and nodded.
At the same time, the first elder shouted, "Family head. What are you doing?"
Seeing that his master was threatened, Wei Pang rushed towards him with his sword and the first elder backed away in fear. Then noise of 3 swords collided with each other, the 2 people next to him moved to block. Wei Pang's sword stuck between 2 swords. The 3 swords all emitted terrifying murderous aura as they faced each other. Wei Pang said with surprised expression, "So, you've been hiding your martial arts this whole time?" The first elder snorted sarcastically, raised his hand and launched a shot at Wei Pang. A gust of wind shoots wing far away.
Other members of the Jin family seeing that scene, they surprised, and the bearded man said, "First elder, what is going on right now?"
The fat man panicked and pointed his finger and said, "It can't be."
The both first elder subordinate came forward and swung their swords to kill the both elders, and then the first elder said, "It's a bit early to be doing this, but it should be fine."
Seeing that, Jin Weikyung quickly ordered Wei Pang to stop him.
Wei Pang quickly turned and used his speed to rush toward first elder.
The first elder looked at them and said, "It's too late." Then suddenly a loud explosion rang out, fireworks shooting straight into the sky to giving a signal.
On this side, after seeing that sacred thread splash, the people of the Jin family who were resting and drinking water said in surprise, "Oh, what the hell is that?" At that moment a sword pierced straight through the chest of the person holding the water bottle. That person died immediately, and the other person did not expect his comrade to kill his own people like that. What's wrong with you? The other guy took off the blue shirt he was wearing. He also threw away the hair tie. He said, "We don't have to hide ourselves anymore." A bunch of people wearing blue clan clothes tore off the entire shirt and instead became another army. The Demon Bow sector and the Third Gate sector, even the Imperial Guards. Jin Weikyung watched his people die in front of him. He was thinking, this is something that's been meticulously planned for a very long time. The 3 sectors continuously killed people of the Jin family. Jin Weikyung thought to himself, if we were going by our plan, we would have started this battle after we killed off the Mount Heng Sword sector.
On the other side, the great elder observing the situation, and said in a low voice, "It's a bit early. Everything requires time and patience."
Suddenly a trembling voice spoke, and it turned out it was you. Liion Beck said with anger, "I'll do whatever I can in order to slice you into pieces."
The great elder slowly bent down and replied, "You still have strength left in you."
Liion Beck was so angry that his face turned red, and he said, "If I can't fulfill this while I'm alive, I'll make sure to do so in the afterlife."
But before he could finish speaking, several hidden attacks were shot straight at him. He opened his eyes wide and collapsed to the ground. The great elder looked at him coldly and then said, "I can't kill you just yet. There is something you still have to do."
He bent down and did something with Liion Beck's body. A scream rang out from behind. "You bastard, get your hand away from him." The great elder heard that. He coldly glared at that voice. Jin Tae-kyung shouted as he ran quickly.
There Mu Jin and the people behind couldn't run fast and shouted, "Captain, can you run a little slower?" But his feet did not stop and continued to run towards the great elder.